A writer, a great woman of words, as well as plenty of other trades, she has penned an autobiographical series that began with her I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. She is one of America's most beloved poets. She read her memorable poem On the Pulse of Morning at the inauguration of President Bill Clinton in 1993. Hello and welcome. I'm Katafara. This time around, just behind the camera, I interviewed Dr. Anjelo at her home in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, USA, just a few minutes drive from Wake Forest University, where she serves as Reynolds Professor.
There's no history of anybody having been enslaved, no human history of anybody having been enslaved for hundreds of years, coming out in less than 100, without the help, serious help, of the enslaver. There's no account of anybody coming out and within less 150 years becoming president of the country which enslaved him, or senators, or congressmen and women, or presidents of Fortune 500 companies, governors of states, presidents or chancellors of the great universities, black. And we're the ones who've had our hands tied behind our backs and our feet enchained. We're the ones. And yet here we are. We've endured all sorts of racism, including the dogs barking at us, and biting. And somehow we've never become bitter. You see, this is really, I've not thought of this before, but this is really an answer of how we have come through. Now, mind you, there have always been good white Americans, too, who supported the struggle toward removing slavery. Some who lost their lives in the attempt to find freedom for others that didn't even look like them. But not because they loved the blacks, but because they loved right. You see? So because of that, that part of the society which supported the struggle to freedom, and the African American who never became bitter, some did, but the majority did not. That means that they were freed already. There was something in the spirit free already. Because if you have a person enslaved, you have to be down there with the slave to hold him, hold her. And that makes you bitter. Bitterness is like cancer. It eats upon the host. Doesn't do a doggone thing to the object of your bitterness. You see? So African Americans, I saw this once, and I haven't thought of this, maybe once in the last 25 years. My stepfather owned a pool hall in San Francisco. And I was in the pool hall one day. He didn't allow anybody to curse in his pool hall. He was a very strange and wonderful man who could barely read and write, but had a lot of money because, again, he was fair. So I was sitting at the counter having some lunch when I saw a group of black men were standing there talking about whites and how bad they were and this and how awful. When a car drove up right to the curb and the doors were wide and open, and it's one-way street, Post Street, and the driver leaned, it was a white man, he asked, "Where is Bush Street?" The man who was the leader in this conversation about how bad whites are, he walked outside. He said, "Now, you go down here to Fillmore and you make a right. Okay, you'll pass Sutter. Now, don't turn there. You go on up 2 more." And then he came back and nobody said anything. They just said, "Yes, really, really bad people." Well, a lot of the African Americans who were instrumental in bringing President Obama into the White House were also aided and abetted by a large percentage of whites. And so some African Americans said, oh, he'll never get in, they won't support him. Only to find, as far as you could see, so many whites. So that meant that people had to change their minds, too. You see?
Did you change your mind?
Oh, my mind, I never got that. Yes, I had to support Mrs. Clinton, Senator Clinton, because I had known her for 20-odd years. And I watched her in Arkansas, a racist state. I saw her come there as the wife of the governor. And I thought, now what is this northern girl going to do? She came there, and I think many of the whites thought she was going to become the governor's wife and have tea parties and, croquet on the lawn. Nope, not at all. She went to work for public health, for education, and a betterment in the prison system. Now, the prison system in Arkansas has mostly black men. She worked to better the conditions. I noted that. Then I watched her when she came to Washington as the wife of the president. And she ruined her reputation with many of the media people because she said, now if you expect someone to come here and bake cookies, you don't want me. And I think it put their backs up, and they never liked her from that on. But I did. I thought, this woman, if she ever runs for anything, I've got your back. I'll support you. In fact, I had met Mr. Obama once. I was not a Illinois person or Chicago. I really knew nothing about him. And I was glad that somebody was running, but I had given my word. And that is. So it was after that my friend and daughter friend, Oprah, talked to me about how wonderful he was. And I said, well, I'm glad, but I've given my word, so there it is. So some of the Democrats called me here and asked me, after Mr. Obama was doing so well, asked me to ask Mrs. Clinton to step down. I said, oh, no. I told her I was with her. I'll be with her until she steps down. When she steps down, then I will go to the Obama campaign and see if I can be of any use. And I did. And I was of use. Yes, I know that she's a serious woman who takes a long time. She really looks into things. And if she's made up her mind, she has reason for it.
Okay.
Yes, she knows I'm a serious woman. And once I've made up my mind, I have reason for it. So she said, you're doing well? I said, you're doing well. And then we'd go on to talk about whatever we had to talk about. The newspapers, some newspapers tried to start something. They said, well, Oprah obviously doesn't listen to everything Maya Angelou says because, oh boy, that makes for a rift. Didn't make for a rift at all. Not at all. Here, just a few weeks before election, Mrs. Obama came, and I was asked by the campaign to introduce her. So I called Oprah. I said, now you know the family. What's she like? She said, she's the real deal. So I said, all right. I waited for her. She came in, and we talked for about 45 minutes. Oprah's right. She's the real deal. So when I went out to introduce her, I said to the audience, these are some of the things this woman has accomplished on her own. And of course, she is the wife of our next president. Let me introduce you to the real deal. So someone at the Washington Post and the newspapers took that from me and said, Maya Angelou says she's the real deal. It was Oprah who said it to me. And she's a wonderful woman. Everyone in the world who isn't a hermit or who isn't a mute uses words. Good morning, good afternoon, bonjour, como está? All over the world, people use words. Not everybody in the world sees a dance every day, or sings a song every day, or sees a painting every day. But words are the building blocks of one's own self. That is to say, I have to take this most common thing, take the nouns and verbs and pronouns and adverbs and adjectives and put them together and make them, throw them against the wall and make them bounce. The poet has to do that. So that people who use words all their lives will listen to a poem and say, you know, I never thought of it that way. So it's magical to help to translate oneself to another person. But everyone who is not mute has to use words. I mean, I know the young people, you know, have their slang, and they do some grunting and yo, hey, you know. That's all right until they need words to explain the nuances, the subtleties, the way pain feels, or loss, or grief, or joy. You need words to explain from me to you. When I heard that the man, although he'd been put in jail for just one day and one night, he was released and that he was found dead 3 days later, I was convinced that my voice had killed him. I was 7, and that's the logic of a 7-year-old. So I thought my voice could kill anybody, and it would be better not to speak. My mother's people did their best, she too, to woo me away from my volunteer mutism. But they didn't know what I knew. I knew my voice could kill people. It was poetry which brought me back to my voice. Poetry alone. I loved to listen to people, but I was in no way even anxious to try to speak. I thought of myself as an ear. I thought of my whole body as an ear. I could walk into a room and breathe in all sound. It's amazing, you know. I think those years account for me being able to remember so much. I had a friend in Ethiopia. I mean, she was an Ethiopian. She is an Ethiopian, I pray the Lord. Yaddrugу. She taught me a song in Cairo 46 years ago. Amazing.
Do you remember anything?
I remember some of it. I know I never got it completely right, but it's Wabatis minya grau, the sutas minya durgau, bad sabin prasui grau, alansau, zaminya gilitau, sing tune in astabus, guryagbau, something like that.
That sounds familiar.
46 years. Well, it was for my brother, more than for me. Somehow, he was everything to me. And so, I had him. But he didn't have his mother, and he loved her so much. And although he was 2 years older than I, he cried for his mother, and I didn't. I had my brother. So, and then my grandmother, my father's mother, with whom I lived, she was so excellent. She was so wonderful. She was a very tall woman, And very much the same way, much as I am today. And she sang in church a lot. She never kissed me. I know that some sociologists and anthropologists would assume because her grandmother never kissed her, there was no love. My older black women, to me, just didn't kiss children, but she stroked me, and she'd call me out to show me off, and she'd put her hand on my head. Now look at that, isn't that pretty? Look at these legs. She was wonderful.
That was much more than kissing.
Oh, it was everything. I liked her. I loved her too, but I also liked her. And so I would follow her everywhere she went. If she sat, I sat. And people in the town used to say to her, "Oh, Sister Henderson, I see you've got your shadow with you." She'd say, "Yes, I guess she is my shadow." Yeah. So she was just everything to me. Well, Mama, I didn't see her lean on anyone. And she used to say, "Lean on no one and bow only to God." So, as I grew up, I learned not to lean on anyone. I hoped for, wished for, but no. I'm a religious person. I'm very religious. I'm trying to be a Christian. That's like trying to be a Jew or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Shintoist. It's not something you achieve and then you sit back and say, "I've got it." I'm always amazed when people walk up to me and say, "Hello, I'm a Christian." I always want to ask, "Already? You've already got it?" Oh my goodness. What I mean, I'm trying to live a Christian life. That is, I respect everybody. I am generous to the needy, to everyone, really. I don't lie or cheat. I don't do things to hurt anybody, myself included. So if I'm offered something that isn't right, I don't accept it. Oh yes, well, I have a few of those. So I write, I'm a poet, and I write prose, I write screenplays and stage plays, and so I'm all sorts of writer. I'm a director. I'm the first black female director in Hollywood, 20th Century Fox. I compose music. I decorate.
You are the best cook.
And I'm a serious cook, yes. Whenever I'm asked to do any good thing, I say, "Yes, thank you. Thank you." And then I start to pray. Then I go to the library. Then I pray some more. Then I ask my preachers and teachers and rabbis and imams and anybody. I ask little children. I will sit and talk to small children for a long time. And then I pray again and I go to work. I work at it. I do so much editing. And yet, some critics, when I have a new book, critics will say, "Well, Maya Angelou has a new book." And of course it's good, but then she's a natural writer. Being a natural writer is like being a natural open heart surgeon. No such luck. No such luck. Nathaniel Hawthorne, a good writer, said, "Easy reading is damned hard writing." I find it so. Over and over and over. I want the sentence to just slide off the page. I don't want the reader to have to think. I wanted him or her to think I wrote this. And sometimes I meet people in airports or in open places, markets, and they say, "Oh, Miss Angelo, I wrote your book last year." I said, "Thank you so much." So, but I find it very difficult writing. Yes, when I'm working, I keep a hotel room, and I go to it, and in the hotel room, I take everything off the walls, and I don't allow anybody to go in the room. About once a month or more, the management will slip a note under the door asking if they could please change the linens, because although I've never slept in the rooms, they think they're molding or getting moldy or something. But I keep yellow pads and Bible, dictionary, Roget's Thesaurus, some playing cards, and pens and yellow pads.
That's what it takes.
That's it. And a bottle of sherry, just to be on the safe side. He's right, certainly. Oh, James Weldon Johnson. Paul Laurence Dunbar. He's my favorite of all time. Langston Hughes, yes, Mr. Hughes. Oh, my grandmother. But you see, I had read Shakespeare. I had memorized, 50 of sonnets. But when I read one of the sonnets, I was sure that Shakespeare was a black girl in the South who had been raped, because of one of his sonnets, I think the 28th or 31st, says, when in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone bemoan my outcast state, and trouble a deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. I knew what that was like. That's the way I felt. How could he know what? So when I was told he'd lived in the 16th century and all of that, 15th, 14th, 12th, that he'd been around 400 years earlier, I said, nah. And he didn't live in England either. He lived probably in Alabama. But I did finally admit. But I wanted to recite, there's a time in the church, almost all black churches, where children perform. And I got my voice back, or rather, I returned to my voice. My voice hadn't gone anywhere. I returned to it, and I decided I was going to render a rendition in the church. And I was going to render a piece, I think it's Portia's speech from The Merchant of Venice, because people would buy things in our store, and many of them had bills 2 or 3 years old. I kept the books. And I think they may have resented me for that. I don't know. But when I was in the street, people would say, "Oh, there's Sister Henderson's California granddaughter. You know, she went mental." It's a shame Sister Henderson's granddaughter, you know. And so I wanted to speak about mercy. And Portia's speech from The Merchant of Venice says, "The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain." But I wanted them to know that they should have had some mercy on me. Well, when I told my grandmother, she asked me, "What are you going to render, sister?" I said, "I'm going to render this piece, Portia's speech, She said, who is the writer? I said, William Shakespeare. She knew. She knew. She asked me and her sister, who is William Shakespeare? And I said, well, Mama, he was white. And my mother said, Mama, I can just wagging her head, no. Not no, he wasn't white. No, I wasn't going to recite his words. So I said, Mama, he's white, but he's dead. Thinking maybe then she'd forgive him. And lived centuries ago, she said, no, ma'am, little mistress, you will not. You will recite Paul Laurence Dunbar, James Weldon Johnson, Count T. Cullen. Yes, ma'am. You will. And I did. But it didn't stop me from using Shakespeare whenever I needed. I know, being a writer, I know he wrote it for me. See, I'm writing today for a Chinese man who's going to be born in about 100 years. Every human being, yes. That I don't know, that I love a lot. That I accept no man-made difference between human beings, none. Any difference made at somebody else's whim, out of someone else's ignorance, I accept none of that, none. I like to be courteous. I want to be generous. I want to be kind. I want to have a lovely sense of humor.
Still out.
So, if I'm remembered for those reasons, and that I write, I do write quite often well. Not always, but quite often. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tafira.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.